first and foremost, let's start with intermittent fasting, right?
Okay.
That seems to be, yeah.
Yes. And so, first of all, there's a lot of different ways that we define that. So, intermittent fasting could be you are eating within a certain window and fasting the rest of the day, to I'm eating normally 2 days and then fasting on the third day. So, there's no one definition of the way that this is. A lot of people do this with the goal of losing weight. That's really the goal. But the studies have not shown that it's any better to intermittent fast or time restricted eating than any other type of plan. The outcome is going to be the same. You're still going to either lose weight or not lose weight. The biggest issue I see, and because I work a lot in the world of active people, is how do you fit this all in? How do I fit my eating in and my exercise? Because exercising fasted is really not what we're looking to do. And secondly, it might really take all the joy out of eating. I can only eat between 8 and 2, and everybody has dinner at 6. What do? Sit there and twiddle your thumbs at the table?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily an enjoyable thing. So, and then the third thing is about intermittent fasting. It doesn't necessarily change what you eat. It changes the time that you choose to eat. So if you weren't eating that well to begin with, now all you've done is you've restricted the hours of that not so wonderful eating. So that's not moving the needle in a positive direction.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's back up just a hair and run the tape back to when you said we don't want to be exercising while we're fasting. There are a lot of influencers and people who don't have the degrees you have and the experience you have that say, oh, definitely, fast, wake up, do your workout while you're fasting. And everything I've read and studied shows that you're going to burn through your glucose stores in about 20 minutes, and then you're going to start eating away your muscle. So what are the facts around intermittent fasting workouts?
Well, and so a couple of things is first of all, I'm always a very big believer in you get your nutrition info from those that do know. And unfortunately, a lot of people putting the information out there don't know it all. And so when we think about this, the goal of exercise should never be muscle depletion. Like that we want muscle preservation or gain, depending upon what we're trying to accomplish. And so this is the problem is we have relatively limited carbohydrate supplies, and we would think, okay, the body will go right to fat. That's what a lot of the influencers are saying. Wrong. That doesn't happen. The body's going to muscle because that's the next available thing. So, look at this. I exercised fasted and then I weighed myself and I weighed less. A, you might have lost fluid. So, and B, you might have lost some muscle, not necessarily lost more fat. And then the other component of this is if you're exercising on empty and you're doing a hard workout, Orange Theory, whatever it is, you might be exhausted half of the way through because your muscles are saying, excuse me, where is the fuel? So that is not always the best outcome. That doesn't mean we have to have an entree before. I'm really more a believer in the appetizer side. So an app before you exercise, not a meal.
Yeah. Okay. And that's great. That really confirms what I had heard and read and that makes sense to me. So if we think about keto, we think about the carnivore. Let's start with keto and carnivore. Not that they're the same, but if we can address those because they're at least they're on the same side of the tracks, if you will. Yeah.
Okay. So, what they have in common is keto and carnivore is that they're both low carbohydrate diets. They are. So, but with the keto diet, if you're really doing the keto diet the way that it's intended, it can be upwards of 80% fat, which means that we could not be getting enough protein in because we're so focused on getting in the fat. With carnivore diet, it's pretty much about the protein, so the animal protein. So you're eating meat, but you're not getting your carbohydrate needs met. Depending upon the meat that you choose, you might not be getting your fat needs met. And it's really about what they don't have in them. So what do they not have? Carbohydrate. So being the fuel for the brain, being the source of fiber, we have got to take care of our guts. And I will tell you, after 31 years in the NFL, I have seen it all. I have had athletes try it all. And initially they do it because it's all about the outward look. I want to have ripped abs. Not everybody gets them because not everybody's built that way. But the unintended consequences. I can't go to the bathroom. Okay, that's a problem. I feel exhausted during the day. That's a problem. I feel a little bit dehydrated, which is one of the biggest issues when you don't consume enough carbohydrate. Carbohydrate helps the body be in fluid balance. So when you take away that carbohydrate, yes, you see the drop on the scale, but that's reflective of fluid loss. And interestingly, when you overemphasize the protein without enough carbohydrate, you can also be losing muscle. This is the thing that people don't think about, or that piece of the puzzle that's not there. So there are times when people could modify. How about if we do like meat instead of meat alone, or not so high in fat, and bring some carbohydrates into the mix? That doesn't mean that it has to be a dessert. There's lots of other options that are available. And, this year, or I even think moving into 2025, taking care of our guts, not just the ripped ab part of it. What's happening on the inside? Because if our gut doesn't feel good, we don't feel good. I am all about gut health.